Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of The Real Man. What? Well, you're going to just sit there and glare at me? Just because I'm not as enthusiastic as I usually am? I just got done watching 3 movies in one night. I'm a little tired, I'm a little wired, and I think I deserve a little appreciation. Nah, I'm just kidding. Let's start the show. Nicolas Cage. Just saying the name aloud conjures up all manner of things in your imagination. Words like insanity, creativity, expressionism, talent, and greatness, all enshrouded in a tall, lanky, mellow rapper. But this shouldn't be an insinuation that Nicolas Cage is a terrible actor, because he's not. The man has the right stuff to win an Academy Award if he wanted to. And he has. But with 110 film appearances to his credit, his filmography reads a lot like a farm party. You know, just a big bowl of stuff in all shapes, sizes, and colors, where you have no idea what the final result is going to be until you sample it and find out for yourself. So, I guess you could say his career is filled with duds, but also treasures just waiting to be unearthed. Among the treasures are Raising Arizona, Leaving Las Vegas, Adaptation, Wind Talkers, 8mm, The Rock, Con Air, Face Off, Bringing Out the Dead, Gone in 60 Seconds, National Treasure, and more. The duds include Snake Eyes, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, National Treasure Book of Secrets, Bad Lieutenant Port of Call New Orleans, Drive Angry, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Season of the Witch, and the miserable piece of crap that had the nerve to call itself The Wicker Man. Bottom line, Nicolas Cage has made some great movies and some not so great movies. Either way, the man is an icon, a legend even. Today we're going to cover 3 of his most recent films. Ones that I guarantee you've probably never heard of. But enough talk. It's time to
release the cage.
Co-written and directed by Panos Cosmatos, Mandy is what I can only describe as a psychedelic, fantastical, heavy metal nightmare with some 1980s horror thrown in for good measure. It's almost as if Stanley Kubrick had listened to a Rob Zombie album and then decided to make a movie out of it. The story is quite simple and familiar. Taking place in the California wilderness in 1983, the film follows a lumberjack named Red and his artistic wife Mandy, who both live in a cabin in the woods in quiet serenity. Both are damaged individuals who are deeply in love, but that love is soon shattered by a horrifying evil. A homicidal cult known as the Children of the New Dawn force Red to watch as they brutally murder Mandy right in front of him, and leave him for dead. Motivated by grief and anger, Red forges a battle axe and sets out after the Children of the New Dawn to avenge his beloved Mandy. But if Red is to stop the cult, their leader Jeremiah Sand, and the satanic biker gang in his way, he will be forced to undergo a monstrous transformation from which there will be no return. Now, I first heard about Mandy a year before its release, and information about it was kind of scarce. But I did read an article that had one factoid in there that caught my attention. Nicolas Cage becomes Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. I couldn't even begin to understand what that statement meant, but nonetheless, I was intrigued. Well, anyway, a year came and went, and I eventually got a hold of Mandy on Blu-ray to watch it. And I was completely unprepared for what I was about to see. For starters, the music is incredible. It was written by Icelandic composer Jóhann Jóhannsson, who tragically passed away just shortly before Mandy's release. It's exceptionally melancholic. It perfectly expresses the film's themes of love, loss, anger, and revenge. It's hauntingly romantic, it's nightmarishly tragic, and it's overflowing with 1980s synthesizer goodness. The cinematography is very solid. I can't pinpoint a single ugly shot anywhere in the movie. And the use of vibrant color throughout the film is incredible. It reminds me of the works of Italian maestro of the macabre, Dario Argento. The only complaint I have from a technical standpoint is in the scene where the children of the New Dawn attack Red and Mandy in their house, and they overdo it with the strobe lights. Now, I'm not somebody who suffers from epilepsy or seizures or any other form of photosensitivity, but even I was getting a headache from all the friggin' strobe lights. The acting in this film is just incredibly stellar. Anybody who has any speaking lines whatsoever does an incredible job. From Linus Roche, that plays Jeremiah Sand, to Bill Duke, that plays Red's neighbor Carruthers, to Richard Brake, that plays the chemist, to Andrea Riseborough, who plays Mandy herself. But hands down, the star of this movie is Nicolas Cage. Originally, Cosmatos wanted Cage to play Jeremiah Sand, the cult leader, but Cage really gravitated toward the character of Red because he felt he had more life experience to play Red. And while he wasn't keen on it, Cosmatos gave him a shot and found out it was exactly the right call to make. Cage is perfect at projecting those emotional extremes that make up Red's personality. I mean, when he's with Mandy, he's the big warm teddy bear that you would expect. After she dies, he comes unglued at the seams in a very epically psychotic fashion that only Cage can portray. Now, let's go back to the Jason reference that I made earlier. Now, there's a part in the film when Red is in the lair of this biker gang getting his gear back after they stole it from him. He ends up helping himself to this concoction that I can only describe as demonic LSD. Then from there, he becomes this silent, brutal, methodical killing machine that's like almost inhuman. Now, according to Cosmatos, his original idea is when Red undergoes that transformation, he wanted his body language to be like Jason from Friday the 13th. Well, apparently Nicolas Cage watched the movie that he was referring to get the idea in his head, but he eventually decided to bring a little bit of antiquity and mythology into it by bringing some influences from the legend of the Golem, which was the Jewish myth of the rabbi who makes a monster out of clay to defend the Jewish people. That just adds so many elements to this movie that make it more than just a movie. It's kind of an experience. So if you're interested in an insanely well-crafted feast for the eyes that has probably one of the best Nicolas Cage performances in 10 years, I suggest you track down Mandy and give it a watch for yourself. But make sure that you know what you're getting into. Directed by Nick Powell and written by Richard Leder, Primal had potential according to the trailer I saw, but the reality was a bit different. The story of Primal follows Frank Walsh, a big game hunter who has just bagged the biggest haul of exotic and dangerous animals of his entire career, including an extraordinarily white jaguar that'll fetch him millions of dollars from the right buyer. However, his plans for a smooth trip to Mexico to offload his animals go up in smoke when the ship he's booked passage on is taken over by a special forces unit who are transporting a highly trained combat soldier turned hitman, Richard Loeffler, back to America to stand trial for crimes against humanity. During the voyage, Loeffler escapes captivity and begins stalking around the ship, releasing Frank's animals from their cages to cover his escape, including the white jaguar. With the lives of the passengers and crew at stake, and his six-figure payday on the line, Frank sets out to hunt Loeffler down and safely recapture his animals before everybody ends up dead. The idea of Primal sounded pretty awesome when I first heard about it. I mean, a professional assassin and killer animals loose on a ship in the middle of the ocean and an experienced safari hunter that has to neutralize both threats? How could this possibly be bad? Well, I'll tell you how it can be bad. In terms of cinematography, Primal is competently shot. Nothing fancy, just good old-fashioned, generic action movie-style filmmaking. Now, for obvious reasons, the production couldn't use live exotic animals like monkeys or a white jaguar, so they had to rely on animals that were computer-generated. That looked atrocious. I mean, I've seen no-budget films that have had CGI effects that looked a million times better than Primal. The acting is wasted potential. For the supporting cast, we have the likes of former Bond girl Famke Janssen and Michael Imperioli from The Sopranos, and they're given almost no opportunities for character development. The only characters that are even remotely close to being fully fleshed out are Frank, played by Nicolas Cage, and Loeffler, played by Kevin Durant. The first 20 to 25 minutes of the movie drag on for far too long. I mean, the writing is just so horrible in terms of the dialogue, and it really feels like the actors are just phoning in their performance because they know the writing kind of sucks. But the moment when Loeffler escapes from captivity and is loose on the ship, that's when things slightly improve for the better. Because that's when it becomes a series of cat and mouse moments between Frank and Loeffler, and Cage and Durant really shine as bright as they possibly can in a movie like this. Cage is really the only one that stands out the most in Primal. I mean, after all, he's the main reason why you'd want to watch the movie in the first place. His performance as Frank pretty much borrows from other similar characters that he's played before, and he doesn't break a whole lot of new ground. But some things I enjoy about it. The moral ambiguity of his character, Frank. I mean, he does some heroic things in the movie, but his primary motivation is just to keep his animals safe so he can collect the $1 million payout waiting for him in Mexico. Best scene that illustrates this is a part where Loeffler has Frank tied up and is torturing him for information. Frank bravely withstands the torture at first, but then he folds like a damn lawn chair as soon as Loeffler starts killing off his animals. Then there's a scene in the final showdown where Frank defeats Loeffler with a powerful paralytic and cold-bloodedly ties him up and leaves him at the mercy of the white jaguar, who happens to be very hungry. So true, Frank may not be a 100% honorable human being, but he's not pure evil like Loeffler, which makes him just a more interesting character in an otherwise mediocre movie. In conclusion, Primal isn't the worst movie I've ever seen, but I wouldn't recommend it as anything more than a curiosity. Co-written and directed by Richard Stanley, Color Out of Space is an adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft short story by the same name. It happens to be my favorite Lovecraft story, and one that I thought would be impossible to adapt for the big screen. The story follows the Gardner family as they move into their new home in the rural countryside outside Arkham, Massachusetts. The family patriarch Nathan Gardner has easily settled into the quiet routine of farming, as the rest of the family struggles to adapt to their new way of life. Then everything changes one night when a glowing meteorite crashes onto their property. The meteorite cracks open and reveals a strange color contained within it. But this is not just a color. It's a ravenous extraterrestrial entity beyond anyone's understanding, from a dark realm outside of the known universe. Soon the color escapes and begins infecting the local wildlife and vegetation, mutating both into strange-looking abominations before draining the life from them. Soon the color turns its sights on the Gardner family, and there's no hope of escape from this cosmic horror. After watching numerous adaptations of Lovecraft's work over the years, I can honestly say that my first viewing of Color Out of Space left me with a profound feeling. For the first time ever, we have a Lovecraft adaptation that's 100% authentic to his work. The cinematography, the music, and the thematic tone all perfectly capture the sense of dread, encroaching madness, and all-encompassing terror that are familiar elements within Lovecraft's dark literary mythos. The story is effectively updated with a 21st century vibe without losing the isolated rural setting that made the original short story so frightening. Littered with Easter eggs all from other Lovecraft stories and with a solid ending to boot, I think that Richard Stanley, in his first ever feature-length film in 20 years, has crafted a fine tentpole movie for a Lovecraft cinematic universe. The most wonderful touch is the voiceover narration provided by the character of Ward Phillips, who acts as the film's pseudo-narrator. His description of the film's events in the prologue and the epilogue are taken word for word from the original short story in the same archaic vocabulary that's present in all of Lovecraft's stories. Let me just give you an example of what I mean here. It was just a color out of space, a frightful messenger from unformed realms of infinity beyond all nature as we know it, from realms whose mere existence stuns the brain and numbs us with the black extracosmic gulfs it throws open before our frenzied eyes. Spooky, huh? The supporting cast that includes Jolie Richardson, Madeline Arthur, Elliot Knight, and Tommy Chong are all skilled and are able to create these relatable and likable characters that sadly undergo a slow and tragic descent into madness and death. But again, the standout performance is Nicolas Cage. Let me explain why. While Cage has his trademark moments as where he goes out there as the character of Nathan Gardner, his performance is perfectly calculated and balanced. You see, he starts off by portraying Nathan Gardner as this lovable geek and the ultimate family man, but the second the meteorite crashes onto their property, we see him start to slowly degrade mentally because of the color's influence on him, and Cage is just electrifying in his portrayal of it. I mean, there are moments when Nathan's his normal good guy self, but then in a split second, he'll explode into this volcanic rage over literally nothing. And then he goes back to normal without any memory that he did anything strange. Then by the end of the movie, he has completely lost touch with reality. I mean, he's hallucinating that his happy family is still together and alive, when the truth is sadly something a lot more sinister than that. So while it's true, Cage has plenty of room to go larger in life with this role, but he has the self-discipline not to go too far with it. Bottom line, Color Out of Space is just a great Lovecraft adaptation. It has an incredible performance from Nicolas Cage, and if you're looking for a horror movie that's outside the normal sphere of vampires, zombies, or serial killers, it might be worth your time to give it a watch. And there you have it, 3 Nicolas Cage movies of varying quality. 2 that definitely deserve to be called classics, and 1 that most probably wouldn't lose sleep on if they never saw it. I'll let you be the judge of what that is. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Until next time, happy viewing.